Thanks for coming back. We're going to continue, of course, but things are moving even faster than they were before, which is quite nice, actually. It's at least things aren't boring. In Canada, where I live, I keep talking about the fascist state that we have, which is certainly what it is. And just to give you an example, the Prime Minister of this country, the leader of this country, makes all the decisions. Anything important. Judicial decisions, political decisions, economic decisions are made by just one person. We have a group here called Kinder Morgan Pipeline Group, which is actually an American group. The government of Canada thought that they should have another oil line leading from the province of Alberta to the coastline of British Columbia so that Canada could sell its oil internationally. The Prime Minister of Canada didn't like the idea that we're selling it to the United States, or at least that's on my own projection, because he wants to avoid that. He's right now fighting America for some reason. He's an inexplicable person. I think there's something else happening here, which I shouldn't bring up because you don't have any evidence to support it. But let me just carry on here. The government of Canada, he decided we're buying Kinder Morgan. Kinder Morgan said their operation was worth $500 million. The leader of our country offered him $4,500,000,000, and they took it. They had a shareholders meeting, and the shareholders they're all spinning their heads like, what? A $500 million company? All of a sudden we have an offer for $4.5 billion? So they took it, obviously. Now, the leader of our country decides, get all the pipe in there, get a whole bunch of workers together, get some guys in there, taking the shots and making the lines and getting things to happen so we can build this pipeline. But there was a challenge to it, and the challengers went to the Federal Court of Canada. Interestingly enough, Federal Court of Canada was created by the father of the current Prime Minister, and his name was Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and he did everything himself too. He made all the decisions himself in Canada. He used to do it. I give you one of his famous examples of his father. His father decided that Canada, when it borrows money, and we borrow money from our own banks, government of Canada never paid interest on that bank, on those loans, up until the time of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was the father of Justin Trudeau. Pierre Elliott Trudeau somehow, for some reason, decided that Canada should be borrowing its money from the thing called the Bank of International Settlements, which is the bank of all banks in the world. And we should pay 5% interest. All by himself he decided that, and it became the law of Canada. So he got it done. Anyway, there's a court challenge to this 5% interest to the Supreme Court of Canada, which has always kicked that can down the road because they don't want to deal with it. Because all judges in Canada, believe me or not, take direction from the government. They are not independent. And the decisions of the judges of Canada are not binding on the government. They are not binding. So let's get back to Justin Trudeau in the federal court. The federal court ruled that the leader of the country is not being consultative. He is not engaging with local groups who have concerns. And so they shut down his plans to build the pipeline. So you'd think this would be a big, oh, stop there, buddy. Yeah, where do you think you're going? But here's the problem the court has. Their decision is not binding on the government. Even though the Federal Court of Canada was created by Justin Trudeau's father, they stopped Justin Trudeau. But it can be appealed to the Supreme Court of Canada. And even on appeal, if the government loses, and this has happened many, many times. I have one of them as myself, as a personal person, self-represented before the government and before the court. I have won 3 times. And the government has always said, fuddle-duddle to you, we are not returning your money. We're stealing it, which they do. So I know from my own personal experience, and I'm watching all these things happen in the newspaper, and I watch it on my computer a lot, as accurately as you can, because in Canada, you see, we have a problem with our press. In the same way they have a problem with the press in the United States about fake news, I think Canada actually invented fake news because we have a broadcasting corporation that is totally paid for by the government, and so the government gets what they want. That's how it works. How else does it work? In policing in Canada, policing is only and all about money, and that's it. I have a woman cop friend who told me this. She laughed about it. She says, policing is only about money, and that's all it is, just money. And they are paid fabulous sums of money here in Canada to be a police officer. It's incredible how much money they're making. And they couldn't get out of grade 10. They got a gun. And they can drink and drive, and they do. They used to arrest them once in a while. They've stopped doing it because, you know, the public were getting a little concerned. Like I'm getting concerned, and here I am on my YouTube channel. So here we go. I have to get back to this because I'm getting distracted about other shit that's happening in the United States. You know, there's the QAnon releases. He has brought up the corruption of government, and in Canada, the government is so unbelievably corrupt. If you were ever here, you can't believe it. But that's what happens when a government decides that all of the judges are now employees of the government of Canada. No judicial decision is binding on the government. That's fascism through and through. And nobody seems to have noticed this. And the Prime Minister, for some reason, says, well, we have loans that build things like the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we pay 0 interest. Now, all of a sudden, we're paying 5%. Now, that man's name is Pierre Trudeau, and he loved women. Boy, did he like women. Woo! Especially the Hollywood women. He loved those girls. And he's a Quebecois guy, you know. He's the French one, the French fact. He used to do this in Canada. They used to call it the French fact. I always put this on the end because the way they speak English, they sometimes leave out the letters. Of course, in French, they leave out a lot of letters. But anyway, let's go back to Mr. Trudeau. Which one are we talking about? They're both the same. The apple did not fall very far from the tree. Justin Trudeau is not much different than his daddy at all. He makes all the decisions, whether you like it or not. And if you raise any questions, he points his finger at you and calls you a racist, and you do not belong in this country, which he just did in his own home province of Quebec, which he didn't live in much. He lived in British Columbia most of his life. He owns a house here. I've been in his house. He's an ass-grabber guy. You know, he never apologizes for anything. Beats people up in Parliament, women in particular, and gives them an elbow in the boob. And she went to the floor. There was almost a Donnybrook in Parliament, you know, but the police refused to lay the charge for assaulting a woman. They don't do that because he's the Prime Minister, and that's how Canada goes. The Prime Minister tells the police what to do. That's fascist as hell, isn't it? In the United States, they can't do that. In Canada, we do it. We should never have done this because we have now Napoleonic Code. We don't have English common law. The people cannot protect themselves. This is a fact, and I've been there many times. And the judges look at me and they always say the same thing. Mr. Wheaton, I'm giving the Crown another 30 days to hear this case. Now, they didn't show up. The Crown did not show up in the courtroom. I want a default judgment. And the judge just shakes their head, no, you're not getting one. I'm giving the Crown another 30 days. So you go back in 30 days and you got another judge, somebody different. Now you got to explain the whole goddamn thing again and ask for a default judgment. And the judge looks at you and shakes her head, no, 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 no. I'm giving the Crown another 30 days. So you go take a look at your file at the judge's decisions, and I've done this. My lawyer friend even came with me. The judge does not put their decision into your file. They leave it out. And they do that to make it look like you have abandoned your case. But the judges of Canada do what they are told to do by the government. I know it's a sour note, but, you know, we have to expose the darkness. And Canada is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Right now, our negotiator for NAFTA, she was supposed to be available on Tuesday last week to negotiate NAFTA. She was not there. She was in Germany making a trade deal, or trying to. And she wants Canada's trade to be primarily with Europe instead of America. Pierre Trudeau did the same thing, the father of Justin Trudeau. He changed all the weights and measures to the metric system, which is the system of weights and measures in Europe, to change our major trading partner from America to Europe. It didn't work. He nearly killed a whole lot of people in an airplane because he did this. But Pierre Trudeau, they make decisions. There's no consultative process in Canada. Hey, the leader just decides what's going to happen. Generalissimo. In fact, here's a good one for you. Canada has developed some wonderful torture tools. Wonderful. And has sold them. Under Pierre Trudeau's administration, he sold to a man named General Pinochet. It's Argentina, I believe, if I have it correct. It was such an effective torture tool. Nobody could resist it. No one. I don't care if you're goddamn James Bond. The name's Bond. James Bond. And I'm addicted to women. And the PPK. Anyway, I digress. However, I don't do that imitation very well. Lots of people can do James Bond very, very well. So here we are looking at all these things, and thank God I get to speak. The police are not hammering on my door yet, but in Canada, you can be arrested and disappear for 72 hours without a charge. And they'll just let you go, actually. They don't bring you back. They come here and take you, but they don't bring you back. You gotta walk home. Hey, you get there and your rent's not paid. They know how to do these things. It's really a shakedown. I have a cop friend who says this. It's a woman. She says, Terry, there's organized crime, and then there's organized crime. And she's right. I have to go, running out, trying to keep my YouTubes down to somewhat of a dull roar. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I am watching, besides this, I'm watching world events like earthquakes, volcanoes, things like that, and major storms. We are being shaken right now, everybody, and I'm very happy to be able to speak the way I can. I hope to be able to do so continually. Thanks for tuning in. Everyone have fun. Bye-bye now.